Hey there, Citizen Paler here, and welcome back. It's time for another tour of duty, and it's finally happening. I'm finally doing the Vanguard Warden. Going to talk about the Vanguard series in general. When I say finally, that might not be something you in particular have been looking forward to or whatever. What I more mean is this is the ship I've been trying to do for a while. I've probably tried to record this thing 20 times, but it's a difficult ship for me to talk about because it's one that I don't know, emotionally invested sounds like too much of a commitment for a video game, but this was the ship when the concept came out and they revealed and everything. I was like, that's the one. That is the ship that, you know, if there was one ship I'd have to have in game, that's the one it's going to be. So there is something there about it with it. And then the ship has gone through a lot of highs and lows. There's times where this ship was super amazing. There's times where this ship kind of wasn't so great like it is now. And it makes for a ship that there's a lot to talk about for me. I've spent a lot of time with it. Then it also has 3 variants that are going to be important to come into play when we talk about this ship and its viability. So yeah, settle in. This one's going to take a while. This might be a 45-minute video. For people that's too much, the TLDR is this. The Warden, the Vanguard series on paper, everything is there for the backbone of anyone's military side of their fleet. The core components are there to have that happen. You'll have a ship that with one chassis, you'll be able to run a small dropship. You'll be able to run a small attack bomber type thing. You'll be able to do electronic warfare. And then you'll have just a general purpose fighter like we're looking at here behind me. The problem comes in though, and it's very much the problem that was with heavy fighters in reality in World War II and why they kind of never evolved beyond that, is when you make something that isn't quite a bomber, but isn't quite a fighter, you have none of the strengths of either of them, but kind of the weaknesses of both of them. And so the Vanguard has relatively good firepower, but doesn't have the maneuverability to really put that to work on a fighter. At the same time, its firepower, while relatively good, isn't that of an actual like capital class killer. It's not that of a bomber, say of that of the Eclipse or something along those lines. So it's weak against fighters, and it's not super strong against larger ships. It's okay against them, but not super strong. So it kind of doesn't really work, and I don't know if it ever will. So again, the TLDR is on paper great, but we have to really see how it's going to balance in. And for $250 for the Warden, what is it, $225 for the Hoplite, and then like $265, $285 for the E-Warfare, and then the bomber version. There's just a lot of investment here into a ship that, yeah, it's tough. As you can see, I want to say yes, it's great, because in a PvE environment where everything's predictable, where you can just kind of beat up on the AI and all that stuff, it works really well. The real hassle real trouble this ship runs into is as soon as one player shows up in a fighter that knows what they're doing, and they're just going to pick on you and beat on you, and there's not too much you can really do about it. They're faster than you. They're going to keep up with you. They're going to outmaneuver you and all of that. And when you do get those brief moments that they're kind of under your crosshairs and you unload on them, the damage isn't there to justify. But we'll get into all that a little bit more as we go into this. Let's go ahead. We'll jump back into first person here. We'll do a quick once around before it despawns off the landing pad. Everything on this ship, one of the big pros of this ship, and we will talk about this a little bit more, is your primary armament is all very closely mounted. It is center mounted here. This is what we have. We have a size 4 Apocalypse Arms ballistic Gatling cannon. So this is size 4. Now you can remove it. It is gimbaled right there, and take that up to a size 5. You also then do have 4 size 2. These are MVSAs, MSVAs, something like that. Size 4 laser cannons. Or I'm sorry, not size 4, size 2. 4 size 2 laser cannons. These are hard mounted into the ship. So unlike this guy down here where any size 4s or size 5s we could put there, you cannot change these out. These are hard mounted in. They're not being replaced. What we get is what we get. So yeah, 4 size 2s, 1 size 5/size 4, depending on gimbaled or ungimbaled for your primary weaponry. As we step back to the side here, you are going to see some very similar aesthetics to that of the Saber. Obviously, the engines are very similar to the Saber in design. You got kind of this ramjet intake, sort of, not ramjet, turbojet intake design to them. Underneath, we do have a significant missile armament, which apparently I fired one off on my way out here. Maybe a few. By default, you get 12 missiles in total, which consist of 4 size 3s and then 8 size 2s, which cover all the different spectrums of lock-on. So the size 3s are cross sections, then the size 2, 4 of them are heat seekers, and 4 of them are electromagnetic seekers. So you have a fairly robust, well-rounded set of missiles loadout on it, but you could change that out for just about anything. You could do 8 size 3s or upwards of, I want to say, 36 size 1s. Don't quote me on that though. We'll continue on around the back here. We do have the gimbaled wings or adjustable wings that'll move forward. Just like the Sabers, when your landing gear's up, they're forward. When the landing gear's down, they're back. It's more for getting into smaller landing hangars. Come around the back here. Here are the engines. Very similar again to the Saber, just a bit bigger. These things here, they kind of look like engines. They don't affect up, which is kind of funny because up here is like the exact same thing, but these do have effects. You'll see this when we get up and actually get flying. Here is the entry into the ship. We'll open that up. Come around the side here, and everything's just symmetrical on the other side. There is a turret up top. Right there, you'll see the turret with additional size. I forget what those are. I think those are size 3s up there. And that is something well, we'll come back. We'll talk about the turret a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and let's get in. Let's get her off this landing pad before we get despawned here at Hurston. Come up in here. We will do a walkthrough of the interior, and then we'll come forward. We'll come back, but let's get flying. Cockpit. It's going to be very, very similar to the Saber. Off the top of my head, I think this panel here on the Saber is down here between your 2 main MFDs, but don't quote me on that. But other than that, it's a very similar panel. Just do a quick review here. You can see it. It's a good-looking ship. I love the aesthetics of this ship. I love what they did with it. The ramp came up automatically when I powered on. Let's come back in here. Let's request takeoff clearance.
Cleared for liftoff.
Bring our engines on. There you see the engines lighting up. Now you see those ones up in front there. Can we see anything coming from them yet? No, we can't. We'll see them once we start going. Opening those very slow doors. Very slow doors. Should be clear enough now. Up. There we are.
Please visit us again. Remember, if you're contemplating a career change, you should contact one of Hurston's resource managers for information about exciting career opportunities.
We'll watch the wings deploy out. Droop. There they go. There's flight mode. Now you can actually see those engines. So the ones up underneath by the landing ramp are active, but these ones here underneath aren't. I'm just not sure if they haven't applied the effects to them. They don't intend to. Even if we hit afterburners, they don't apply the effects, which is a little strange. Slowing down, you get the reverse effect there, and then punch it back up. Alright, let's get going this way, and I will talk a little bit about this ship as we head up. Once we get in atmosphere, we'll climb out, and we will actually walk through the cabin. So, as you've already seen, here is the little cockpit area going on. We come back. We do have what I'm considering kind of like the neck or the shoulder of the ship. In here is our components. So you see we have 6 component-like locker areas. Here would be like our shield generators, things along those lines. This will be a ship where you can actually pull out and replace damage or repair things with your multi-tool. It gets real bright in here. I'll let the gamma correct. But that's kind of this neck shoulder area of the ship. We'll come down here into kind of the crew quarters area. First thing, we have 2 bunks. This is quote-unquote a 2-person ship, so 2 people can log in, log out right here in this ship right there. There is kind of room for a 3rd one above it, but it's taken up, but it is a two-person ship, so two is fine. Back here is that engineering terminal I was talking about. We'll open it up. Right now it doesn't do anything, and I'm not entirely sure what they plan to put on this. If we power it on, it's just the standard MFDs that they could do anything else with. There we go. So you can do comms, all that other stuff. It's fine. Exit out of there. Over on this side here, we do have kind of a little, I'm guessing this is going to be like meal prep or whatever. This would be where you'd get your meals and stuff. For now, they don't do anything. I don't know if they ever will. And then over here are 3 lockers. I'm trying to, why? It's like the power went off. Why is it so dark? Yeah, it's like the power went off. I must have hit a hotkey when I brought that up and turned the power off for the entire ship. Very strange. Alright, now let's go back again with our lights on. Hopefully I don't have to keep using the flashlight. But yeah, you got 3 lockers right here. Eventually you'll be able to keep your armor, weapons in there and all that stuff. Then we'll come back around. And here's one of the memes about this ship. It has a very large bathroom for a 2-person fighter. You know, it's not large, but compared to some of the other medium-sized ships that have much smaller bathrooms than this, ships that are significantly bigger and have more crew have smaller bathrooms than that, there's kind of a little meme area. And then we're back here into the back again. This is our landing ramp. And then up here is like a little door. There's nothing actually here. And in fact, there's no part of the ship really there. There's like an air filter on the back side of that. That's all there is. Oh, turret directly above us. Hang on, I got turned around. Right here is the turret. We enter into here from right there. This is all kind of broken right now. You see there's a seat comes down. Actually, the exit's what's broken. And we'll power on. Let's see. Oh, I can't go into third person mode. They don't have it attached for this. But it's an okay turret. It's got ballistics on it. Those aren't repeaters. They are ballistic weapon. We can switch our gyro mode. Let's see. Can we see our ammo on it? It does have an ammo capacity. Don't see a way to change that. But yeah, you get the idea. It's a turret. It's really annoying. I can't go into third person mode. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and we'll power it off. Exit out of there. At this point, we kind of need to talk about the variants of this ship and some of the changes coming to this ship in 3.6, then 3.7, and so on. So there's 4 Vanguard variants. There's the Warden, which is your base model, though it's not actually the cheapest of the base models, which is a little strange. That actually goes to the Hoplite, which is the dropship variant. And those are the 2 currently in game. There's the Warden, the fighter, the Hoplite, which is a 6-man, I think. It might be 8. I think it's 6-person. Kind of a light dropship type effect, you know, just 6 Marines, nothing else. They're not taken in a vehicle or anything. The ship's not that big. And then in addition to that, you have the Harbinger and the Sentinel. I think it's called the Sentinel. Let me double check here. Yeah, the Sentinel. So the Harbinger is a hybrid fighter bomber type thing. It takes the current Vanguard Warden. In the back, you pull out the shower, basically everything on the right hand side, drop in torpedo tube rack, and then it looks like we think it's going to have 3 size 6s. It appears. It's not been finalized. None of this is completely written in stone yet, but it looks like 3 size 6 torpedoes that would come out the bottom of the ship, similar to that of the Eclipse. The Sentinel is another one that's a little up in the air. That's an electronic warfare variant of the ship. They talk about it having interdiction type possibilities like EM fields or something it can put out. It can also maybe run as a little bit of a data runner. Again, we don't fully know, but basically the back components, everything gets pulled out and they put some type of computer server or EMP generator or something in there in that place. The reason all this is important is the Warden, the Harbinger, and the Sentinel were all built based off the same chassis. 2 people, the narrow ramp, and all that stuff. And that was the original concept. The hoplite came about sometime later on. And in the development of the hoplite, they discovered, well, while the concept of this ship as a light dropship worked, it had significant flaws where getting 6 Marines in and out of the thing in a reasonable amount of time was a bit of a problem, mainly due to the back end of the ship and that narrow ramp. You could only get 1 person up or down and through the door at a time. So the hoplite got a rework. And they took the chassis, they kind of expanded the chassis out a little bit. They adjusted the ramp so more people could come and go. They changed how the back door works and everything. So you could get 6 guys in and out of it fairly effectively like that. So this means that the hoplite is technically on a different chassis than that of the Warden and the Sentinel and the Harbinger, which kind of goes against what they were going for with this ship. One of the things with the Vanguard is it does have underneath kind of a bay, and basically you're supposed to be able to modularly change out the back end and the components, excuse me, and make all 4 variants out of that one ship. In reality, what they ended up with was much more like the Freelancer, where the Freelancer could become the Max and it could become the Dur and the Miss, the missile variant and the exploration variant, but it couldn't become the Max variant, right? The Max is a different chassis, or more like the regular Hornets compared to the Super Hornet. So what they're doing is in 3.6, at least ETA of 3.6, which is going to be Q2 of 2019, they're basically taking the Vanguard back and they're adjusting all the variants to kind of run on the same chassis. So they're going to be much more like the hoplite. There's some other minor reworks that they've talked about. It looks like the ship's going to be getting a little bit wider across the board. They're going to just be stretching it out a little bit. So there's a little more room. That way when the turret comes down and someone's getting in or out of the turret, you can actually get around and get up to the cockpit if need be or whatever, just so things fit a little bit better overall. So the reworked Vanguard Warden is going to be coming in 3.6. Then the ETA on the Sentinel and the Harbinger are currently 3.7, or the CitizenCon patch going on. So the interior that we're looking at right here and now, this is kind of how it is. And when 3.6 comes out, the Warden should still have, 2 bunks, an engineering station, a shower, a little cooking area, some lockers. But they're going to be, a little bit more room. They're going to be a little bit reworked. I don't know if the hoplite's getting the same overhaul. You imagine has to, but yeah, keep that in mind. This stuff is all subject to change. And then with that out of the way, now we gotta kind of just dig into the nitty gritty of this ship. So the Warden starts off at $250, and the price is somewhat important to this ship because of where it fits in with everything. A lot of this has to do with kind of the concept behind a heavy fighter, and the Warden succeeds and fails in many of the same aspects of where heavy fighters actually succeeded and failed in realistic aviation back in World War II. There's a reason heavy fighters don't really exist today. And the brief rundown of what that was is they wanted fighters that could travel longer distances, stick up with bombers, protect bombers for longer strikes and everything, before aircraft carriers and all that other stuff was really common, or even when they were common. On paper, that sounds great, but in reality, when those planes arrived at the end targets, what they discovered was everything that they took to make them travel those longer distances, larger engines and better fuel capacity and all that stuff, meant that once they were over the target and actually defending the bombers they were sent there, they lost a lot of maneuverability and climb rate and all this other stuff, where locally based fighters would come up and kind of just mop them up and then go on and take down the bombers anyway. So the heavy fighter, for the most part, as a role of an escort fighter, did not work. They got converted over. Some of them were used for strategic bombing, like if you only had to hit a small specific target, you didn't need to send some big heavy bomber. You could load a couple of these up, go over at nighttime, and they maybe wouldn't cause the reaction from local air defenses or whatever, because they would just see 2-3 small fighters coming rather than a squadron of bombers coming. So they kind of got converted over to that. History lesson over. The Vanguard Warden suffers much the same fate, What is it supposed to do? Is it supposed to be a fighter that goes out with things like Idrises and Polarises and kind of escorts them on longer range missions and stuff? Because if that's the case, it doesn't really work in that role. It has okay enough firepower. If you can bring all of its guns to bear, it will burn through a fighter fairly effectively. But the thing is, it doesn't have the turning or the maneuverability to actually really do this. In terms of maneuverability and turning, it's basically exactly that of the Super Hornet, a little bit less than the Super Hornet in terms of roll, or that of the Cutlass. The Cutlass Black and this Thip, in terms of like top speed and acceleration and all that stuff, they're all very similar in terms of performance. Which, you know, inherently isn't a bad thing on its own, but what this does mean is when you have most of your weapons being those 4 lasers mounted dead center, you need to be able to turn and roll and all that stuff with the best of any of the ships if you're going to be able to effectively do it. And you just really can't do that right now with the Warden. So then the other thing is, well, maybe its job isn't so much to dissuade or take on other fighters in a dogfight. Maybe its role is more that to go ahead and fly into an area, ignore the light fighters, unload on a heavy target, and then fly away. Well, if that's the case, then the problem becomes, well, there's 2 problems with that. One, its firepower output isn't high enough to just do that. You can get through a Connie, you know, especially an AI Connie that's just kind of sitting still and not really doing anything in a reasonable amount of time. But much beyond that, your guns start overheating. Those force center laser cannons, their damage isn't terrible. The fact that everything's center mounted is pretty good. It means if you hit with one of them, you're going to hit with all of them, which is not something you can say with a lot of other ships. You know, if you look at the Mustangs or whatever, and it's not uncommon to where you fire and maybe 1 or 2 of your lasers hit, but because they're so spread out, the other 2 miss. That's not really going to happen with the Vanguard. If you are accurate and you hit with one of those lasers, odds are all 4 of them are going to hit. And then the ballistic Gatling cannon kind of fits in there too. But the lasers overheat quickly. You only get around 10, 12 salvos, upwards of 15 salvos if you overclock your coolers before they have overheated and they shut down. Then the ballistic Gatling, its damage isn't that great either. So as like just ignoring it, going for high value targets, popping them and flying away, you don't really work. The other problem is, while you are tankier than the average fighter, you're not significantly tankier. You do have a notably more hit points. It has 22,000 hit points currently. And you also have 2 size 2 shield generators, which gives you a reasonable amount of shielding, but not great. In fact, what I'm gonna do is I'll cut some footage in here. During one of the times I was trying to record this, I was just kind of flying away from Port Olisar, and a regular Hornet, I think it was a Hornet Ghost or something like that, showed up. And the only thing the guy had was 2 of the Mantis miniguns, I think size 2s under his wings, and he tried to gank me. So we got into a turn and burn fight, circle strafing fight and everything, where, you know, me versus him, and he didn't kill me. I beat him in the fight, but watch my shields. Watch what he does to my shields with these 2 size 2s, and watch how many bullets I have to spend. It's nearly 1,000 bullets. I think it's like 900 bullets I shoot in order to finally do enough damage to him where he's like, I'm gonna lose this fight, and leaves. Now, some of this is me. I'm not the best pilot and everything, but you can see I hit this Hornet with a lot of these ballistics, and it doesn't do a huge amount of damage from the shielding, so you can't, I guess the summary is, you can't use this ship as like a strategic strike craft that just kind of ignores the oncoming stuff, hits, and then flies away. And that's kind of where what is the role of the Vanguard Warden? And I don't know what it is. And I don't want it to be a super overpowered ship. But I mentioned earlier that it's $250. And what it fits in right now is, at $250, it's basically that of the $110 Cutlass, but a bit more tanky. That's really where it fits in. The Cutlass, in terms of firepower output, is roughly on par with it, especially if you include the turrets in place. It's maybe, the Warden's maybe a little bit better, 15% or so better than the Cutlass, and it's maybe 30% more tanky than the Cutlass. For $130, $140 more? I forget the exact cost of the Cutlass Black. That's kind of not a great place for this ship to be. And then, unlike the Cutlass, the Warden doesn't have any cargo capacity. There's no trading you can do, which really kind of is like, well, what's it supposed to do? Now, it's not all bad. Like, as I said in the beginning of this video, on paper, there's a lot of points that there's a lot of chances for this ship to be great. You know, some tweaking to the speed, maneuverability, all that stuff could change all this around. Heck, just changing out the front mounted nose gun could make a big difference in this, though there's not too many size 5s or 4s currently in game. This is something I want to play around with, and in a future video, probably for 3.6 when it relaunches, we'll cover this a little bit more. With some different front loadouts and everything, but the fact that you can only change out one, the primary nose gun, only that one, there's not a whole lot of options there for that. Now let's take it back a little bit, as that's kind of the issues, the concerns with the ship, but it's not all bad compared to the fighters in the game. So everything from your not even really a fighter, but the Mustang through up to the Saber. Even the Glaive. You know, one of the big flaws of those ships, it's not a flaw, but one of the trade-offs to having that type of fighter is there's a lot of things you can't do. You can't run, you know, you can't take your friend with you, Super Hornet being a little bit of an exception there, but you can't go out and do like retrieval missions, picking up black boxes, doing little things like that. For those, the Warden's actually very good. It's reasonably fast. It's got the size 2 quantum drive, so it travels from, you know, through quantum a little bit faster than your fighters. You get out there, you can grab a black box, you can just throw it on the floor in the back there underneath the turret, get back in, fly away. So it has more mission utility than those ships. It's along the lines of that, again, of the Cutlass Black or the Freelancer when it comes to utility, minus cargo hauling. So it does all that well. It's really good at doing the missions like down on Hurston, going down and taking on the little outpost with like the 5 automated turrets and all that stuff. It does a good job at that. You know, its front shields are tanky enough that you can kind of just come in there, then use the gimbaled front nose gun to pop the turrets, land, go in, clear it out, come back out, make your 7,000 credits. It also leaves atmosphere reasonably well, better than that of, say, the Connie, probably better than that of the Freelancer. I haven't raced the two. Not as good as a fighter, but reasonably well. You know, it does all that stuff just fine. Even doing AI missions, going out and doing the ECN alerts, especially when the AI is quote unquote broke and they just kind of fly forward for you for easy pickings, you know, against then you can take the fighters on doing just good. But as soon as another player shows up that has reasonable amount of skill and knows how to fight a Vanguard, you're in a whole lot of trouble. Because if they're in a fighter, they're going to outturn you. Then if they're in something like a Freelancer, the Freelancer will out DPS you. The Freelancer's front guns will out DPS what this thing can do. It's just a simple fact. What do they have? 4 size 3s? Hang on here, I have hardpoint open. Let's see, Freelancer can do, by default, these are size 3. So it has 4 size 3s that it's taken on after you. That will out DPS you. By the time you've gotten through his shields, your lasers have overheated, and then you're down to just the ballistic Gatling cannon. Well, 4 size 3s beats 1 size 4. It just does. So that'll out DPS you, and you'll lose to a Freelancer of roughly equal skill. And you're not going to be significantly outmaneuvering. I have it open here. Let's see. Let's look at the Freelancer's overall maneuverabilities. So yaw rate and pitch rate of 65, roll of 95, 60, 65, 90. Then we look at the, whoops. Apologize for that. We look back at the other ones. For the Warden, so our yaw is 90, our pitch is 80, and our roll. So we're roughly 25% better in terms of maneuverability than the Freelancer. So it is better. It's on that of the Cutlass, but it's not amazingly better. It's not like if we look at, let's take an arrow. Anvil, arrow. Open a new tab. Just loading here in a sec. So these guys got like a yaw roll pitch of 125, 125, 165. So again, another 30% higher than what you have in the Warden. So as you can see, it just kind of is in this questionable state. But yeah, you can do anything against the AI without much of a problem. It's when another player shows up and they want to fight you. You can win those. You saw the video in the background where I beat the Hornet, but you're only going to win if A, you're the better pilot, or they make a mistake. If someone comes after you in a Gladius or an arrow and they make a mistake and you get a hit on with the 4 primary laser cannons, oh, they're going to feel it. Those laser cannons will pretty much take down their shields in one good salvo. But you're going to need to get 2-3 salvos to take out most ships with that, and it's going to be very difficult to do before they get through your ship. Now that's all about the Warden. The reason this ship still sits in my, I think it's probably a good buy, is when you take into account all the different variants. If we take into account the Harbinger and the fact that we're going to carry, we think 3 size 6 torpedoes, maybe 4 size 6s, maybe they're size 5s, size 7s, we're not entirely sure. Well, now you have a ship that is going to be a little more robust, with a little more firepower. They also talk about in the description for the Harbinger that it's going to have additional armor on it and everything. And that's another area where this ship could be balanced out later on. If you look at this ship, it's fairly bulky for a fighter type craft. And then the inside doesn't really match up to the outside. This leaves a lot of room where they could put armor plating on this ship. So perhaps in the long run, that second roll I was talking about where you kind of fly in, you ignore the fighters, you unload on a medium to large class ship, you do a bunch of damage, and then you fly away and you go back home. Maybe that does work out in the long run when they add in armor implementation, similar to how the Super Hornet will become better when armor gets implemented in. So that is one thing. And then beyond that, the Harbinger is supposed to have more armor on top of the base Warden model. You also then have an electronic warfare model and a dropship model, all of which should be easily changed out within game by pulling components and putting in different modules and all of that stuff. So by owning just the let's say the hoplite, the cheapest model one, you know, it does give you a lot of different options that no matter what's coming up, as long as you're not looking to run cargo, mine, or repair, you can basically do it with one of the Warden variants, or mix and match components and get it to work within that. So, all that sounds great on paper. We got to see it in game. You know, when in game will we be able to, okay, I have the hoplite. When can I go to a shop in game, buy the components needed to swap it over to the Harbinger, buy the components to swap it over to the Warden, and so on. I don't know. So, as we are approaching the it's been a long video mark, if we have not already approached that, that's kind of where I sit. The core components, the possibilities are there for this ship to be literally one of the strongest in game. Right now, it's just not there. And it's an expensive ship to gamble on. It may be at some time. I'm okay with taking that gamble. Personally, I'm okay up to $100, $120, maybe $150. We're now $100 beyond that for the Warden. If I didn't personally just find the ship visually really cool and really enjoy flying it and all that stuff, and a great everyday ship, I wouldn't recommend it. And I guess in the long run, I'm not going to recommend it. What I'm going to say is you have to go in and you have to weigh those options yourself. Look at everything. Look at what I just proposed. Consider the rework coming in 3.6. Consider a lot of the other stuff that's going to be coming on. Consider the variants. And if you want to invest that amount of money, it's completely understandable if you don't. But obviously, I'm somebody that does. It's a tough one. It's a real tough one. As one little adjustment the wrong way, they have a super overpowered ship that everyone must buy. You know, a ship that can do everything combat role wise with addition, you know, with all that stuff, the ECN and everything. Or if they adjust it one wrong way the other way, it's a ship that can do everything combat wise, but everything, there's other ships out there that beat it in every aspect of the manner, and you're just kind of wasting your time with it. Can go either way. So, alright guys, that's enough about the Vanguard series. We will be revisiting this ship again. You're going to see it many times, but definitely with 3.6 upgrade and then the variants in 3.7. Until next time, this has been Power. Thanks for watching.